Welcome to Fontaine fifth wheel preventive maintenance procedures for no slack 2 fifth wheels. This program covers the recommended steps for performing the 90-day 30,000-mile PM and includes visual inspection, function, wedge stop rod adjustment, and lubrication. Remember to exercise extreme caution, follow all stated and customary safety procedures, and be sure to wear safety glasses. Begin the visual inspection by closing the lock in order to clean and degrease the fifth wheel properly. To close the lock, push the bumper off its seat with a pry bar. Exercise caution. When the lock closes, the handle moves in quickly. After cleaning, inspect for damaged or missing parts. Make sure that the fifth wheel is securely fastened to the tractor. Pay close attention to welds and areas around bolt holes. Make sure that there are no cracks or missing bolts and that nothing is hanging loose under the fifth wheel. Make sure the bracket pins on both sides are in place and secured by retainer pins and cotter pins. Use the pull handle to open the lock. Then insert a Fontaine kingpin tool, part kit KTT, to make sure the locking mechanism is functioning properly. Only minimal force is required to activate the mechanism. Be careful. When the mechanism closes, the handle moves in quickly. Make sure the jaw and wedge are engaged behind the kingpin, and that the pull handle is fully retracted. In the lock position, the pull handle should be within 1 inch of the skirt of the wheel. Open and close the wheel again. Look for a quick, crisp closing action. If the action is slow or sluggish, it may be due to a buildup of old grease or a bent part causing binding. If the wheel is difficult to open, it may be due to a tight or unlubricated wedge. The wedge can be released by striking the end of the spring-loaded wedge stop rod with a hammer. Now check the wedge stop rod adjustment. Push on the wedge stop rod until it touches the end of the wedge and let it spring back. The wedge stop rod is spring-loaded and should spring back out after you push it in. This movement, or free play, should be 1/4 inch when coupled to a 2-inch kingpin. To adjust, turn the wedge stop rod counterclockwise to increase the free play, or clockwise to decrease free play. 1/4 inch free play is important. Turning the rod in too far will result in slack, causing premature wear. But any improper adjustment can cause the fifth wheel to bind and become very difficult to open. Now it's time to lubricate the fifth wheel. On models without bracket liners, apply grease to the 2 Zerk fittings on each side of the top plate. Use a moly-based lubricant such as Mobile Grease XHP 320 and 321 or equivalent. Rock the wheel back and forth while applying grease. Some grease should flow out of the bearing pockets. If you do not see grease flowing from the bearing pocket, use a crowbar to lift the top plate while applying the grease. On models with bracket liners, if the fifth wheel does not rock freely, remove the top plate to inspect the liners. Initial inspection of the bracket liner should be made at 180,000 miles on standard duty applications and at 120,000 miles for heavy duty applications. After the initial inspection, bracket liners should be inspected every 30,000 miles. To inspect, remove the bracket liners with a screwdriver. Visually inspect the liners and replace them if they are broken or show excessive wear. Liner thickness must be at least 1/8 of an inch at the top of the liner. To reinstall, strike the top center of the liner with a rubber mallet. Now reinstall the top plate. Push the bumper off its seat with a pry bar to close the lock. Exercise caution. When the lock closes, the handle moves in quickly. Pull back slightly on the release handle and separate the jaw and wedge with a screwdriver. Use a moly-based lubricant such as Mobile Grease XHP 320 and 321 or equivalent. Distribute grease between the jaw and wedge, pressing it between the serrated surfaces. Also apply grease to the stationary jaw at the front of the throat. Work the lock mechanism back and forth several times to further distribute the grease. For sliding fifth wheels, lightly lubricate the pivot points of the mechanism. Operate the mechanism to ensure it is functioning properly. The top plate groove should be filled with a liberal coating of grease. With a light coating of grease on the remainder of the top plate. Remember, under lubrication could lead to steering problems. You have now completed the Fontaine preventive maintenance procedures for no slack 2 fifth wheels, and your truck is ready to be returned to service.